If you were following Smash Bros. During January of 2020, you no doubt remember the reactions to Byleth's character reveal. Byleth was the fifth and final character of Fighters Pass 1, and was very poorly received by the Smash community.
It's Dante. It's a guy with a sword?
To many, it was a bold decision on Nintendo's part to make their final DLC the most hated archetype of a character, a Fire Emblem anime sword fighter. With the addition of Byleth, Fire Emblem tied the mainline Mario series with 8 fighters. To many, this choice of character was baffling, including myself. And after seeing many inconsistent aspects of Byleth's character, I began to think, Byleth seems rushed. There's so many small parts of their inclusion that caused me to theorize. Was Byleth even supposed to be in Smash Bros? I believe no, Byleth was never supposed to be added to the roster, and I'll walk you through why. Of course, take this all with a grain of salt. I'm not an insider, and this is all speculation. I'll lay down all the facts of the situation and explain why I came to the conclusion that I did. But I encourage you to come to your own conclusion on the matter. Without any further ado, I present... The first thing that got me thinking about this theory is how little in common Byleth had with the other Fighters Pass 1 characters. Joker, Hero, Banjo-Kazooie, and Terry are all legendary third-party characters, each making a huge mark on the gaming industry. Persona 5 blew up with popularity, and may be one of the most influential RPGs of the 20s. On the topic of RPGs, Dragon Quest basically invented the genre during the 80s, and remains one of the most recognizable games of all time. Banjo-Kazooie is considered by many to be the peak of 3D platformers and collectathons, and was also one of the most highly requested characters for Smash Bros. Terry brings with him the entire SNK Corporation, responsible for hundreds of fighting games that dominated the arcade era. And then there's Fire Emblem Three Houses. A great game, no doubt. I enjoyed it personally. It sold more than any other Fire Emblem game, which is less than any of the other Fighters Pass 1 characters' games. Three Houses sales are big, no doubt, but development on the character allegedly began before the release of the game, so that can't have been a factor in choosing Byleth. It's a well-known fact that Nintendo themselves chose the characters for the DLC rather than Masahiro Sakurai, and it would make sense they would want to promote Fire Emblem using Smash Bros, but that begs the question, why was Byleth chosen? The only other character with a game on Switch was Hero, and that was a standard multi-platform release. The others wouldn't have had a presence on the Switch until way later. Why was Byleth chosen, especially as the final character of the pass? Wouldn't an earlier slot have made more sense to promote Three Houses? The characters for the first Fighters Pass would have been finalized before the release of the game, as well as initial development of those characters. Well, barring any extraneous situations, such as what I theorize has happened in regards to Byleth, that's why I'm not counting any Fighters Pass 2 characters in this argument, as they should have been finalized before Fighters Pass 1 wrapped up, because the second pass was announced shortly after Byleth's release trailer. On the topic of that trailer, let's talk about elements of the character that point to rushed development. The first thing we saw of Byleth was the announcement trailer posted January 16th, 2020. And it's undoubtedly one of the worst of any Ultimates DLC. They literally reused animation from a Three Houses cutscene, then mixed it with a scene made using the game's engine. The original animation they have is incredibly stilted without much movement. The reveal is also the only one not to feature any Smash characters outside of the gameplay. On top of that, the trailer just really doesn't make sense. If the viewer hasn't played Three Houses, they have no clue who Solon is, what's happening to Byleth, and how joining Smash solves Byleth's current situation. And of course, did I mention the funniest out of context moment in any Smash reveal?
You wield the sword as well? What will you do?
Did Byleth just turn into a girl? Good for her. But in all seriousness, this reveal trailer is really bad. Recycled animation, no action, plain text boxes, and confusing editing point to a rushed project. And Sothis' quip about too many sword fighters just proved Nintendo knew this wouldn't go over well. Byleth's actual release isn't much better in that regard. Byleth had only one remixed track out of the 11 added, split into 2 languages. And trust me, I know music takes a long time to make. So again, this implies there wasn't much time to flesh out the track list. I tried to see if the stage and background characters were ripped straight from Three Houses, but the results were inconclusive. Now you might be thinking, well, it's a transformation stage, wouldn't that be harder to make? And normally I'd agree, except for one thing. This is how the stage handles transitions. Every other transformation stage in Smash has a fully rendered scene in the background, except for this one. Oh, and the background characters also reuse animations from the King of Fighters stage. Pretty suspicious if you ask me. But moving on to the actual character themselves, there's a lot of little things to mention. Most glaring is the memed upon PNG Final Smash, which, yeah, I don't need to elaborate on. Just look at it. Instead of anything unique, Byleth's 7th and 8th are the same as the ones from the PNG Final Smash. Byleth's idle poses are the same as the ones in the splash art too. I don't know how important that is, but it's still an odd thing to include. But probably the biggest difference between Byleth's moveset and all the other Fighters Pass characters is that every single other DLC has some sort of gimmick to their moveset. It could be something small, like Banjo's Golden Feathers or Sephiroth's One Wing, but everyone has something, except for Byleth. The closest thing you could argue that Byleth uses is different weapons for each attacks, but that doesn't affect anything about the character, that's just a visual thing. I think Byleth is pretty fun even without any distinguishing characteristics, but the moveset is very boring. I'm convinced that Byleth was rushed through development. There's so many inconsistencies with the character that make me believe Byleth wasn't meant to be the final Fighters Pass 1 character, but they were added regardless. I can say with confidence that Byleth was not planned to be in Fighters Pass 1, but that begs the question, why was Byleth added? From here on out is speculation. I have no inside knowledge to confirm my theory, so just remember to take this all with a grain of salt as we explore why. The fact that Byleth was included in the game as they were points to something unfortunate happening behind the scenes. If an event occurred where the last Fighters Pass character needed to be scrapped, then Byleth makes a lot of sense as a choice for Smash. The main thing going for Byleth is that they're an in-house first party. Sakurai has confirmed that licensing third-party characters can take a very long time, and even Nintendo subsidiaries such as Game Freak have a very strict licensing process. Of the major first-party series, excluding Pokemon, which is the only one that got a main Series 1 in 2019, Fire Emblem. If Nintendo was forced to choose the first-party rep, Byleth was the most popular and reasonable choice. Byleth was chosen before Three Houses released, so Nintendo didn't know how well it would sell, but the point still remains. Byleth was easy to add and implement in Smash, but with all the other huge names and unique gimmicks, he sticks out like a sore thumb. So, what happened that Byleth had to be added instead? Let's look at our time frame. I believe one particular event caused the character delay, but I'll save what that is until the end. I gotta have a cliffhanger. I'll refer to it as the incident, which happened in early October. From early October to January 16th, they had to make everything Byleth needed for his inclusion. That's a time frame of 4 months. Now, initially I saw this and I was confused. There was no way a Smash character could be made in just 4 months. And when I thought about that, I almost scrapped this video altogether, but I started looking back to 2015. In April of that year, Nintendo would open the Smash ballot, where Smash 4. Bayonetta would end up winning the ballot, and was then showcased in December and released in February of 2016. They showed gameplay in her trailer, and her and her stage were fully modeled and functioning by that December trailer. That's only 2 months after the ballot closed. Now, they probably just started development before the ballot's closure in October, but they still would have had to deal with Sega to get Bayonetta's license for Smash Bros. Sega is a developer Nintendo commonly works with, so getting the rights shouldn't have been that difficult, but legal things like that take time. Not to mention Bayonetta herself had a far more complex moveset than the other Smash 4 characters, and they were also developing Corrin at the same time. Given the short period of time Bayonetta took to release, and if development went as smoothly as possible, I think Byleth would have been possible to add in just 3 months. I say possible, but not easy. However, if all the hands were on deck shortly after the incident, I think rushing a character out in that time could have been feasible, especially with the hundreds of people working on the Smash Ultimate team. And with that, the timeline makes sense. Except for one small detail.
To understand the concept of Fire Emblem Three Houses, I played an early version of the game before its release.
In his presentation, Sakurai says that he had to work with a pre-release version of Three Houses for Byleth. Uh-oh. This means Sakurai was working with Byleth before my so-called incident happened. Okay, it's fine. I'm not coping. I could explain this. My first explanation is probably a bit uncomfortable to longtime Smash fans, but Sakurai could just be lying to make it look like Byleth was the intention the whole time. I know. The internet loves Sakurai, he could do no wrong, but he's under no obligation to give a true account of what happened behind the scenes, and Nintendo could have pressured him to say that. Alternatively, and I like this theory more, Byleth could have been the backup plan for Smash Bros. The whole time. If anything, possibly even an incident, were to happen to invalidate one of the character inclusions, they would implement Byleth quickly. Thus, Sakurai likely played Three Houses early to help him design the character, but no development actually happened on the character until after the incident happened. This could also help justify the 3-month dev time, if the character design was already created. Honestly, to me, this makes far more sense than Byleth being planned as the 5th Fighter's Pass character, especially with all of his inclusion's shortcomings. So, with all that out of the way, I'm sure you are wondering, what was the incident? Now, it would be unfair of me if I didn't give you all an answer of who Byleth replaced, even though I have zero confidence in my answer. Now, if you thought the last part of the theory was speculation, this is basically just a guess. Not even a game theory, just a game guess. Take a huge pile of salt with this following information. I have no insider info. Now, the biggest gaming drama in the months prior to Byleth's release happened on October 6, 2019. This is known as the Blitzchung controversy. If you need a refresher, a Chinese Hearthstone player was banned from competitive play of support of Hong Kong's independence from China. This caused outrage across the gaming world, as many companies pulled out from Blizzard and its reputation began to sour with gamers. This would all later be overshadowed by more damning accusations against Blizzard, so this could be very well the tip of the iceberg. But how does this all relate to Smash Bros? Well, I believe the last DLC character would have been one from Overwatch, a Blizzard game. So, why Overwatch? Well, it's one of Blizzard's biggest properties and was very popular in the mid-2010s. It's left a huge mark in the gaming industry and revolutionized esports. Overwatch is also probably the best way Smash could have added an FPS character, because most of the weapons in the game bear no resemblance to real firearms, unlike most other first-person shooter games. And also, the blood and violence are pretty subdued in Overwatch. Okay, that's nice and all, but what does this have to do with Smash? Well, Nintendo was really hyping up Overwatch for the Switch at the time of the Blitzchung controversy. It was leaked in August of 2019 and officially announced during that year's September Nintendo Direct. Nintendo even went as far to license an Overwatch-themed carrying case for the release of the game. But after the controversy, Nintendo kind of slid Overwatch on the Switch without any fanfare, hoping to not stir the pot. Remember, Nintendo chose the characters that would appear in the Fighter's Pass, so choosing a character to advertise an upcoming game makes a lot of sense. The only character that was really advertising a Switch game before Byleth's release was Hero, and it would make sense if Nintendo wanted another character to help advertise Switch games. So it's my personal theory that an Overwatch character was meant to cap off Fighter's Pass 1. However, due to the Blitzchung controversy, it was better for Nintendo to scrap the fighter and go with Byleth instead. But who from Overwatch could fit the role? Remember, this is all speculation, no justification. Please don't take... So, the most obvious character to choose is probably Tracer, the mascot of the series, and her inclusion would make for a pretty unique fighter. However, in my opinion, one large thing stands in the way of Tracer's inclusion, and that's the fact that she's LGBT. Smash's first gay character would be a pretty big event, and while we in the West would celebrate, countries like China, Russia, and even Japan and Korea would oppose it. Considering these are very huge markets for Nintendo, they probably wouldn't want to jeopardize their sales in those countries by adding Tracer, especially with the press that would surround her inclusion. Personally, I believe if they were to add an Overwatch hero, it would have been D.Va, for a few reasons. In the lore, D.Va's a Korean esports player, which would have been a big boost to Smash's popularity within Korea. D.Va also consistently ranks as one of the game's most popular characters among fans. The amount of cosplays shows that perfectly. Finally, there was a leak in August of 2019, after the Switch case leak, saying that a girl in a mech might be joining Smash, so people naturally assumed it might be D.Va. This is obviously false in hindsight. Maybe it was actually true before the controversy forced Nintendo to switch who would they include. To sum it all up, under my theory, Fighters Pass 1 was supposed to end with D.Va, not Byleth. So was this all true? Well, no, it's impossible to say what was happening behind closed doors at Nintendo's, and I can't say any of this with any confidence. The one point I will stand by is that Byleth was a rushed conclusion. There's too much evidence to deny that, but I can't confirm what happened behind the scenes. But I hope this video got you all thinking. I've been floating this theory around for a long time now, and it feels good to finally get it out there. So anyways, thank you for watching, and I will see you all in my next video.